Hi, my name is Imre, and I'm hoping to do a series based on some of the work I've done with photography, since I do it both as an amateur enthusiast and as a professional. Not on a huge scale, but hey, I still love doing it, and that's what counts. And well, today I'll get right to the point. I'm going to start out with explaining what Aperture is, since it's a very useful tool. You can really focus on subjects, for example. You can do special effects with it, and it can be sometimes a little bit baffling. So I've got my trusty camera here that I'll be using to take some still shots and show you what it looks like. And I also have this quite an old lens, probably as old as I am, but it's a great tool to use to show you what an aperture actually looks like, so you can kind of get the idea. So let's get started and first learn about what aperture actually is and what it looks like when you're actually dealing with a lens. So here we have that Carl Zeiss 50mm lens that I'm using. This one has an aperture, or an f-stop, of 1.4. And I'm using this lens because it has a very large opening, so it's quite easy to see how the iris diaphragm works to make the aperture larger or smaller. Plus I can set it manually, I don't need to have it on a camera. Works really well for this purpose. And as you can see, I'm turning the dial to set the aperture size. When it's wide open, you can see right through the lens there quite easily. That basically means that a lot of light can enter your film or your sensor. It goes through the lens. Now, if you restrict how much light goes through the lens, that's when you have that small diameter there, that small opening. And of course, now you're getting less light into your lens. But of course, this has some side effects, which I'll of course talk about later, called depth of field. So now to that terminology that I was talking about. And you'll see here on this little slide, f-number, f-stop, f-ratio, focal ratio, and aperture, well, they pretty much mean exactly the same thing. It's just a way to refer to what you saw earlier physically, that iris diaphragm, how large or how small that opening is. And now for a little more terminology. You'll commonly hear fast and slow lenses used. Fast lenses basically refers to lenses that have fairly small f-numbers. In other words, they have large apertures. And as you can see, example, the f1.2, f1.4 lenses and such. Whereas slow lenses, those ones have smaller apertures, in other words, larger f-numbers, and for example, f3.5 and up. And to continue, fast lenses, generally they allow for higher shutter speeds to be used, in other words, shorter exposure times. Slow lenses, those ones usually need lower shutter speeds, or in other words, longer exposures. Now, of course, this kind of depends on the amount of light you have, but nonetheless, that's the idea. And by now you're probably thinking, okay, great, so I know what this f-stop means and the aperture, I know what it looks like, but really, what can this be used for? Well, it's required basically for the shutter speed. In other words, it's needed for the correct exposure, so your picture's not too dark and it's not too light. And it also sets your depth of field. In other words, how much of your photograph is going to be in focus. So basically, a larger f-stop, or f-number, means that you'll have more of your picture in focus. If you're using smaller numbers, less will be in focus. Let's take a look. So one of the ways I'm going to demonstrate how depth of field actually looks like, it's kind of cliche, but it works. I've got a ruler, and I've got a 50mm macro lens here, and this starts at f2. And it goes up to, I believe, f22 off the top of my head. I should know that. But nonetheless, I'm going to be kind of putting it like that. I'll put it on one of my mounts here. And I'll take a couple of shots using a different depth of field settings, or different apertures. And that way, you will be able to see about how much of the ruler is actually in focus. Simple, but it works. So after setting up my camera, here's what the images look like. So the ruler is really close here, and I have my lens set to f2. As you can see, you can barely see anything at all, quite frankly. All you see is just a tiny little line there. But as I adjust my lens to f22, you can see quite a massive difference. Now you can see quite a bit of the ruler in focus. I have a nice little animation here And we'll swing right through that so you can see how the depth of field increases as you increase your f number. Now, as you increase your f number, the one thing to keep in mind is the aperture actually gets smaller. That's when that iris diaphragm closes up, so you're actually letting. And quickly for some real-life examples. This first image is one I took of a dragonfly, and as you can see, there's a very shallow depth of field here. The dragonfly is sharp, so is the leaf it's on, but those leaves behind it, which were only a few inches away, are already quite blurry. In this next image of a compass, and that's a radiometer, by the way, sitting next to its left. Just little knickknacks sitting on my shelf. Again, these are very tiny items. The compass is about 1 inch in diameter. So you can see, again, I took a shot, and the depth of field very tiny. The dice that were about 1/2 inch from it are already starting to be blurred. But now we move to another image where the depth of field is enormous. And it also depends on the type of lens you use. This was a wide-angle lens. And up front you can see the rocks are completely sharp, whereas the Rockies at the back, those are sharp as well. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about Aperture and how it works, and you'll be able to have some fun with it. In future episodes, I'll probably hit on other topics such as shutter speed, sensitivity of the camera, lens types, and so on and so forth. And don't forget to subscribe, that way you'll stay up to date with all of my videos. And also check out my blog, and I'll post that in the credits here in a moment. And yeah, definitely I'll include some additional items there as well. So thank you very much for joining me. Hope to see you next time.